Happy Sabbath. I want to share some experiences that I have had over the past couple of months that I didn't get to share in the last video because it was just like running across the top of everything. So the first one is I got to do a closing of the bone ceremony with my family, and it was a special experience for me because it was something that none of them would necessarily have thought of to do, but when I asked to do it, they all just immediately willingly participated, and my husband looked up all this stuff about it, and everyone contributed something. And so it just really meant a lot to me as an end, a closing of that chapter of my life of conceiving and carrying and nursing, bearing children, delivering children, all of those things. At least babies. So it was cool. My husband read some different things that he had found online about it, just the history of it and traditional aspects of it and what it meant for him to do for me. And I mean, if you haven't heard of it, then for sure look it up. It's super cool. And then our oldest chose some tea for me to have, and I decided I've been not saying people's names. Hello, little friend. Oh my, what? Oh my gosh. Maybe I should start this video over. So I really believe in animal messenger signs, and I had been debating about just starting to say my kids' names, and I was about to just say okay, whatever, I'll just start saying them, and then that huge bumblebee type beetle bug thing, I don't even know what kind of bug it was literally dripping something, and I'm still seeing it fly around. So I don't think I'm going to be saying my kids' names. That was oh wow. It's still just flying around the chair while I was sitting, so I'm just going to stand right here. Anyway, so then our next child, our 13-year-old, chose some music to be listening to. Then our 11-year-old chose some essential oils for me to have in the diffuser and to put on my feet and just different parts during the ceremony. And then our 9-year-old chose some stones for me to hold, and then our 5-year-old, our now 5-year-old, lit all of the candles, and then our youngest helped everyone to choose a scarf. So I say she helped everyone, but she chose a scarf first, and then everyone else also chose a scarf because there's part of it that's wrapping. And so they did the ceremony. They did this little rebozo scarf thing where they wrap and then they do this little rocking thing, and I was laying down, and they were all just on both sides of me holding onto the scarves, and then they wrapped me up, and then they let me just have a few moments to meditate, and that huge bee thing is still flying around over there. So I'm just gonna keep staying over here because I already got the message, but it's still there. So, and while I was meditating and just listening to the music that our 13-year-old had chosen, I had a beautiful vision of the sun, and like S-U-N, the sun. And I was like, oh wow, okay, why am I receiving this vision? Like I just kind of like went into the sun and was like received the sun, and it was just like gloriously all around me. And when I asked about it, I was just shown that the symbol of the sun is actually like in the first temple, in the like Jewish tradition, the great lady, her symbol was the sun. She was a sun goddess. And so I just felt very fitting to be received into that sun. And so, yeah, I was just, again, I felt so supported and heard and seen by my family during this closing of the bone ceremony. And it was also fitting because I had just finished weaning our youngest. And we had been on the way out for a little while, but on the last day that I nursed her, we sat down and she kind of like went in and she looked up at me and she signed all gone. So I was like, okay, let's like try the other side. And so she like went again, and then she looked at me and she was like, it's all gone. Like she signed all gone. So I was like, okay, I guess we're done. And she didn't, like, she wasn't upset about it or anything. I mean, like previously she had been kind of upset that like there wasn't very much milk, but I've been like going through menopause, and so like my hormones were so wrecked and there's so much stress. And anyway, I just felt to not take herbs to make it come back. And so it was definitely on its way out. But that day was just sweet. And I was like, yeah, like I'm here. I love you. This is just one aspect of the way that I nurture you that we can let go of. And she's just so sweet with everyone, all of our kids, and my husband just love her and adore her and help with her so much. And that's a really different experience than I've had with any of my other babies. So it was just perfect timing, and I was grateful for that opportunity. Okay, I'm gonna see if I kind of wanted to sit down in the sun, but if my little friend is still over there, we'll see. Okay, we'll just keep standing up, I guess. Okay, so that was the closing of the bone ceremony. Another thing that I wanted to mention that I had forgotten to in the other video was about my watch. Our watches, I guess. One of my other kids also, like when he saw me and my husband having such fun with our watches, then he wanted one and asked for one for his birthday. And so now he also like tracks his steps and his sleep and his like he uses it way more than we do, actually, like for notifications, for hydration, and for like, he tracks his heart rate, and he has it like synced with a device to, I don't even know. He uses a lot more than we do. And I thought it was just really funny. But anyway, so I'm rocking like almost 5 miles a day, just walking around my house. Like I said, I'm not training for anything right now. I'm literally just going about my day. And our house now is probably about half the size that it was in Missouri. And so it's not just because we have a super huge house or something. I mean, our house in Missouri was like so ridiculously large, but and this house is perfect for us, but it's just crazy to me how how much I walk around, and I am just so grateful for my body. Like, my husband and I were going out to dinner, and we had to like run across, we had parked and we ran across the street to not be in the way of traffic. And when we got to the other side of the street, I was like, how awesome is it that I can just run across the street without even thinking about it? Just, and the same thing last night, we were dancing around for our daughter's birthday. She was like showing us this dance routine that she had made up, and so then we were all dancing. Our 13-year-old was showing us this line dance that he had learned at an activity, and I was just dancing around, like jumping and like doing all this stuff because I remembered it from when I was a teenager, Cotton Eye Joe, and I was like, I am not hurting at all. I'm just dancing around with my family. Like, it's just such a beautiful miracle. I am so grateful to my body and to my holy ones for the gift of life and healing and the possibility to recover wholly. So, yeah. And then, speaking of apps, was I speaking about apps? Well, my watch, and it has an app that connects with my phone. I also love the app Insight Timer. Have you heard of that? It just has a whole bunch of different guided meditations and music and ambient sounds with a timer so that you can like meditate for a certain amount of time, whatever. I love that app. I use it almost every day. Sometimes I forget and I'm like, or I just don't have time, and then I have to start my little counting over like, now I'm back to 0 days. But it's just so beautiful to hear people worship in music and praise through music. I don't know if all of them are necessarily worshiping something. Well, I mean, they're devoting themselves to the practice of that instrument or rejoicing in the beauties of the earth. And I love music so much. It speaks to me so deeply. And to hear all of these different songs, a lot of times I don't even listen to ones with words. I just hear the music. And yeah, I'm grateful for that app. So there you go. There's a plug. And I also wanted to share about that I'm experiencing my words coming back to me. And what I mean by that is, before we left Missouri, I received an animal messenger of a squirrel in a poignant way. I can't remember if I got to actually tell this story or not, or just alluded to it, but a squirrel died in our attic above my doorway, above my prayer closet doorway. And I was like, okay, show me. And I learned a lot from that experience. But one of the messages that I received from that squirrel was that I had planted a lot of seeds that I had like forgot about or not got to see come to fruition, or hadn't like went back to find and use. Because squirrels do that, like they hide nuts and seeds, but then they don't remember all the places that they hide the nuts and seeds. And so then some of them other squirrels find, and some of them grow up into trees, but so I'm having this experience right now over the past few weeks of hearing my own words come back to me, and I'm receiving that message of the squirrel. So like, for example, I felt this one time to get on Facebook right then, and I was like, okay, I hardly ever get on Facebook anymore. And like, no shame to those people who are on Facebook all the time, like whatever, I just don't right now. And I got on, and the second thing I saw was this girl who I knew in Utah. She's like super, like she has a ton of followers on every social media thing that she does. She has a ton of followers. And we were super close friends, like had so much fun together, learned so much together. Like, I love this girl. And I saw her, and she was doing one of those like live video things. And she was talking about something. And I'm not trying to be like, but she was talking about something that I had taught her. And then we had like learned a lot about it together. So we had learned I'm just going to leave it at that, because I don't want to seem like, oh, well, I taught her everything she knows, or, anything like that. It's not like that, even though she has told me that one time. It's a funny story, but okay. Anyway, I was like, and I saw that there were hundreds of people. Like, she was doing one of those live videos. There were hundreds of people watching her video. And, like all these love, whatever, all these people commenting. And I was just like, oh, wow. She has the platform to get that message out there in a way that I couldn't. Like, I'm not. Like, we are a lot alike, but we're also very opposite in a lot of very obvious ways. And so she has like that platform to share that message. And so she was. And I was so grateful, because I think it's good learning. But my words came back to me. And then I'm having a lot of experiences with my kids too, where, like, for example, one child will come and tell me like, okay, maybe it's not even worth it to go into specifics, but they just tell me things that I have told them in the past as if it's new information. And I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's really good. And then today, I went to church to hear my husband give a talk. And like 3 or 4 times during the talk, he said things, and I think he was saying it like to me because he knew that I was there listening. But it was things that I have said. I can't speak in church right now. And so it's like I got to hear my word. And those are all very healing experiences for me. to get to hear that I'm making a difference, that those seeds that I've planted aren't lost. Even if I planted them and then moved forward without a second thought of what would come of it. Like I did it just to do it, with no further plans, I guess. So that was just awesome. And this is going to be a super long video. Okay. Then the last story. It kind of has to do with hearing my word come back to me. So a couple months ago now, we had lived here 1 month. It was still Halloween time. So like before Halloween even. So we hadn't even lived here a month. And I was serving lunch to the kids, everyone was running around wildly, whatever. I was trying to get lunch ready. And I hear a knock on the door. And so one of the kids went to answer it, and I hear this super authoritative voice ask for me. And so I went up to the door, and it was an officer. And it it was a woman. She introduced herself and she said that she was a CPS officer and that they had received a call that we needed to talk. And I immediately I checked in and I was like, no, this is fine. And I have to back up for a second because as a homeschooling mom and as a mother of 6 children, I've heard many, many, many horror stories about CPS. And I know a lot of moms who are deathly afraid of CPS. Child Protective Services, in case there's another acronym out there that's also CPS. So, and there was a time in my life when I was accused of something, and a tactic that was used at that time was that, if I didn't cooperate, basically, that I'm sorry, I'm not giving a lot of details, but it would just detract from what I'm trying to say. Basically, they were like, you could be declared an unfit mother and your children will be taken from you if you do not something. And that was terrifying to me at the time because I know people who that's happened to, in this same situation that I was in at that time. That I'm just not going to go into the detail. I just know someone personally who that happened to, who I think she was wrongly accused, and it's still just a really bad situation for her and for her kids and family. And so coming here to Southern California, I know there's a lot of really terrible things that happen. I worked in an action agency as a teenager and a young adult. If it's horrible, it's happened to a kid. And I've known a lot of them. And so I knew, I was safe within myself and absolutely confident that there was nothing in my behavior that would elicit that a need for CPS intervention. So I invited her in. I was like, hey, we're about to have a picnic. Do you want to come out? She came in out to the back porch and ate with us. I mean, she didn't actually eat, but she was just interviewing me. And then I had to leave and each of the kids came and were interviewed. And I could be within eye shot of them, but I wasn't supposed to be there. And I heard her asking them all these questions, super detailed questions about all this different stuff. And and they were giving such hilarious answers. One of them, she asked my now little 5-year-old, she was like, so when you get in trouble, what happens to you? What do your mom and dad do when you get in trouble? And he was like, I get my stuffed animals taken if I come out of my room after I'm put to bed. And then he was like, and if I use violence, I have to do 3 kind things for that person. He was so serious. And she was trying to be taking him super seriously too. But anyway, so all of them were just brutally honest about what's happening in our home, what's not happening in our home, everything. And finally, so it got to our oldest, and that was a super long conversation. And then the officer called me back out and was like, okay, we just got a call from a concerned adult. They were, the adult was, and I know who it was, who was concerned for your oldest, who was exhibiting some, needs, which I was aware of, and filled the officer in on what we were doing to take steps for that. And she said, okay, I'm going to give you these resources, and I'm going to go ahead and close this case. And And so then we started walking to the front door, and she was like, "Oh, I love your Halloween decorations." And or the kids were showing her one, and so she was like, "Oh yeah, I love that Halloween decoration." And they were like, "Yeah, isn't it so cool we decorated for Halloween?" And she was like, "Yeah, it is." And I was like, "Well, they're talking about, because we just moved here. Like, we moved in on October 1st. We didn't get our stuff until the second week of October. Like," and she was like, "You just moved here? Like, you just moved here 3 weeks ago?" And I was like, "Mm-hmm." Because our house, like, you couldn't tell, you know, everything was all set up. We're like really fast at doing that now. But she was like, "Well, that's a major stress factor. Like, that alone could have caused these things that were reported for your teenager." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, I guess we've moved a lot, so my kids are just kind of used to it. I hadn't thought about it." And she explained about like comorbidities. Well, she didn't use that word, but it's like, okay, like, here's this stress factor, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "Oh yeah, our family has had like 7 of those in the past short while." And so we were just, and to a certain extent still are, just under a lot of stress. And so to have like that stamp of approval from a government agency who had been held over my head before, of like, "Oh, you know, this is going to happen to you," or whatever. It was just a healing experience for me to be like, "No, actually, I'm a good mom. And I didn't need anybody else to tell me that. Like, I know that with myself and with God. I mean, obviously no one's perfect. I'm not, okay, you know what I'm saying. But there are so many people who are afraid of that experience happening to them. And I just got to walk through it and just be like, "Oh, great, this person has resources for me. Okay." And then just like move on from it. And that gets to happen to me. I get to, and I'm not trying to like sign up for something, but I do have an extremely dynamic life. My doctor that I've talked about, that I just love, she said that too. She was like, "You just have so much. I don't know how you hold it all." And my mom said that too. She was like, "You are such a determined person. Like, you've always been a determined person. Any, like, a weaker person would have buckled by now." And it's God. It's the God in us that makes us able to do these almost impossible things. That kind of took a turn. I wasn't necessarily meaning to quote all of those other people, but I just wanted to just share that experience. All of those experiences that have been part of my healing and learning. And this is a really long video. So if you made it this far, wow. Wow. Thanks for listening. Shabbat Shalom.